October 19th, 2018, Shanghai, China. OpTic India, the pride of a billion people, is one map away from making history. The crowd is loud, the stakes are massive. This is the eXTREMESLAND Asia Finals, which is a $100,000 international tournament, and for the first time ever, an Indian CSGO team is actually competing at this level. Then, mid-match, the game suddenly pauses. One admin walks over to the team station, then a second, then a third. Within 5 minutes, 5 admins are huddled around a single player's PC. The player's name? Forsaken. And what they found on that computer didn't just end the match. It didn't just disqualify them, it ended an era. It set back Indian esports by years. It embarrassed one of the most recognizable gaming brands on the planet, a brand that at its peak was valued at over $150 million. And it all happened in the span of about 20 minutes, live in front of the entire world. This is the story of OpTic India, how one man, one cheat file, and one catastrophic moment of greed destroyed something that thousands of people had poured their dreams into. Let's get into it. To understand why this scandal hit so hard, you have to understand what OpTic Gaming actually was. OpTic wasn't just an esports team, it was a movement. Founded in 2006 by Hector Hex Rodriguez as a Call of Duty sniping clan, OpTic Gaming grew from a group of guys making YouTube videos into one of the most iconic brands in competitive gaming. They weren't just winning tournaments, they were making esports fans. Their players became internet celebrities. Their community, known as the Green Wall, is one of the most passionate and loyal fan bases in the entire industry. At its peak, OpTic Gaming was the third most followed esports organization on social media in the entire world. By 2017, the brand was so valuable that the Texas Rangers co-owner, Neil Laban, and investors created a holding company called Infinite Esports and Entertainment to acquire a majority stake. They built a new Dallas headquarters, content studios, player apartments, the works. The valuation of Infinite Esports eventually climbed to a $150 million asking price when they put their majority stake up for sale. It was eventually acquired by Immortals Gaming Club in 2019, and the deal was described as the largest change of control transaction in esports history. This wasn't a small operation. This was a multi-$100 million empire built on trust, community, and years of competitive excellence. So when OpTic decided to expand globally in 2018, into new regions, new games, new markets, it made complete sense. And the most ambitious piece of that expansion, India. Let's talk about India in 2018 for a second, because the context here is important. India had 1.3 billion people, an enormous, hungry gaming community with players who were talented, passionate, and desperate for recognition. But the Indian esports scene had a major problem. A lack of infrastructure, a lack of investment, and almost zero international presence. Pro gamers in India often couldn't even afford high-spec PCs they needed to compete at the top level. Some of them were taking 24-hour train rides just to get to LAN events. Then, OpTic showed up and changed everything. In May 2018, OpTic Gaming announced they were forming an all-Indian CSGO roster through completely open tryouts. In partnership with SoStrong and AFK Gaming, they invited every aspiring Indian gamer to submit an application, and the response was staggering. Over 1,400 players applied. Players were traveling from remote cities across the country just for a shot at wearing the OpTic jersey. From over 1,400 hopefuls, just 5 players were selected. They were flown to Bangalore, moved into a boot camp together, and given their first opportunity at earning money through esports, along with coaching and access to OpTic Gaming's full international resources. Here's where things start to get uncomfortable. Even before Forsaken was selected, there were whispers. His teammates admitted later that they had heard rumors about his past, that he was fishy, that something wasn't quite right about his gameplay. One of his own future teammates said directly, "Although people were saying he was fishy, we didn't have any proof or any concrete evidence to bench him or kick him off the team." And this wasn't even the first time Forsaken had been in trouble. Back in 2017, the Esports Integrity Coalition had flagged him for owning a Steam account that had received a VAC ban. He claimed the account had been sold to him and that it wasn't cheating. They gave him the benefit of the doubt, but still handed him a 6-month ban for Steam account sharing because even if he hadn't cheated personally, selling an account was still a breach of Valve's terms and conditions. A professional player, already banned, already flagged, red flags everywhere. And yet, OpTic brought him in anyway. Kinda sounds like dating in 2026. There's even a clip from 2017 involving a top Asian team, Tyloo, where one of their players reportedly knew that Forsaken was cheating. And that clip was circulating online the day the scandal broke. The signs were there, but in May 2018, OpTic India was officially announced. And initially, things looked great. In just a few months, OpTic India went from a brand new team to one of the most exciting stories in Asian CSGO. They dominated the domestic Indian scene almost immediately. They won the ESL Indian Premiership Fall, the most prestigious CSGO tournament in India, defeating Slaughter Rage Army in the finals and taking home nearly $7,000 in prize money. They qualified for the ESL Pro League Season 8 Asia event. Within weeks of their first serious matches, they had cracked the top 10 in the Asian regional rankings. For context, no Indian team had ever done anything close to this. The whole country was watching. Fans who had never cared about CSGO were suddenly glued to their streams. Young players across India were using OpTic India as motivation to grind harder. This team was on track to be the first Indian side to genuinely compete against the best teams in Asia. They would qualify for the eXTREMESLAND 2018 Asia Finals in Shanghai, a $100,000 tournament featuring the best teams in Asia. They were representing not just their organization, but a nation of over 1 billion people. Then came October 19th, 2018. OpTic India are mid-match against Vietnamese team Revolution. They've already won the first map. They're opening up a lead on the second, and they are 1 map away from advancing to the knockout stages of an international $100,000 tournament. And then, pause. It starts with one admin walking over, then a second appears, then a third. By the time 5 tournament officials are crowded around Forsaken Station, the entire arena knows something serious is happening. Even Asian CSGO media outlets live tweeted from the venue, saying something seriously off during the OpTic India vs Revolution game. Stay tuned. Here's what happened. The anti-cheat platform being used at the event had flagged suspicious activity on Forsaken's PC. When an admin walked over and asked him to return to the desktop so they could check his system, Forsaken panicked. He tried to close CSGO. Then he tried to quickly delete a program running in the background. He actually pushed an admin away, literally shoving him when they tried to get closer at his screen. But it was too late. Tournament officials recovered the file. It had been partially deleted, but they found it. The executable wouldn't run anymore. It just printed an error message saying Windows needed to be updated to open it. That file, its name, was Word.exe, not Microsoft Word. A custom-built aimbot and cheat program disguised with the mundane file name to avoid detection. Word.exe, a cheat so infamous it became a meme that the CSGO community still talks about to this very day. OpTic India was immediately disqualified from the tournament. Forsaken was escorted out of the building and put on the next flight home to India. His teammates sat in the arena holding the Indian flag, some of them in tears, probably thinking to themselves, what even just happened? Within hours of the scandal breaking, OpTic Gaming severed ties with Forsaken completely. The development director issued a statement saying, the other 4 players had no knowledge of this and would have never agreed to play if there was even the slightest hint of it. But OpTic didn't just stop at releasing Forsaken. Within days, they disbanded the entire OpTic India roster. All 5 players were released. The whole project. The tryouts, the boot camp, the months of grinding, the historic wins, wiped out overnight. Gone. And then it got worse. Investigators didn't just stop at the eXTREMESLAND tournament. ESL India, which had hosted the Premiership Fall event just weeks earlier, the event that OpTic India had won, launched their own investigation into Forsaken's performance. What they found was damning. The same cheat used at eXTREMESLAND was found on Forsaken's SSD from the Premiership event. Match analysis showed it had been activity used during the competition. This wasn't just a one-time panic decision. Forsaken was a complete loser. Subsequently, OpTic India's win at the ESL India Premiership was nullified. On October 25, 2018, the ESIC handed down its verdict. Forsaken was banned from all esports-related activity for any organization for 5 years that covered ESL, DreamHack, UMG, and Intel. Effectively, everybody in CSGO hated this guy in about 2 seconds. ESIC Commissioner Ian Smith didn't mince his words. He described Forsaken's actions as causing great damage to the Indian CSGO and esports scene, and personally said he hoped we never see him back in CSGO or any other game again. Forsaken eventually broke his silence in a public statement, writing, "I am broken inside, but I am paying for what I did. I feel guilty of stealing away the opportunities from my teammates. Each one was extremely talented, and I have jeopardized their chances of being where they deserve." And then he deleted all of his social media accounts and disappeared. Let's actually count the cost here, because this goes so much further than one guy getting banned. The 4 innocent players. Their careers had been derailed overnight through absolutely no fault of their own. The opportunities they earned, the platform they built, the international stage they reached, gone. And you have to remember, OpTic's brand can essentially carry you to making a career in esports. There are players who don't do anything, rarely stream, but still just support the OpTic Gaming brand and make a living doing that. So the fact that Forsaken took that opportunity away from 4 players who could have potentially built their brand off of OpTic is very sad. The Indian esports scene took a devastating hit as well. Editor-in-chief at CSGO2 Asia put it, almost immediately, everyone was allergic to that region and that scene. International organizations that might have been looking at India as their next investment destination suddenly backed off. The trust that OpTic had spent months carefully building, showing the world that India had talent worth investing in, was destroyed overnight. There were fans threatening to beat Forsaken up at the airport. Online communities erupted with anger. An entire nation felt personally betrayed. And for OpTic Gaming itself, the damage was enormous. Remember, this was happening at the exact time the parent company Infinite Esports was reportedly losing over $1 million per month. They were trying to restructure, already laying off staff, already trying to hold together a company that had expanded too fast. The last thing they needed was a globally publicized cheating scandal attached to their brand in the middle of all of it. The OpTic India project was one of Infinite's flagship expansion initiatives, proof that the brand could go global. Instead, it became proof of the opposite. Hex himself 2 years later in a podcast said it was one of the greatest what-ifs in esports history. A $150 million brand, 5 months of work, one file called Word.exe. Here's the thing though, the Forsaken scandal didn't just leave a scar, it also eventually forced a reckoning. Because when you have that kind of public, catastrophic, embarrassing failure live on stream in front of the world, you can't pretend the problems don't exist. The Indian CSGO scene was forced to look at itself honestly. The lack of proper background checks, the absence of rigorous anti-cheat protocols, the blind eye turned to rumors about a player because he was talented. All of it came into view, as Nishant Patel from AFK Gaming acknowledged afterwards. We clearly realized that we don't have enough checks and balances in place, and so they built them. Stricter vetting processes, stronger anti-cheat measures at domestic events, a culture shift where integrity started to actually matter. Within a year, India was hosting its first ever international CSGO event, DreamHack Mumbai, and a new generation of players was emerging from the ashes. Today, Indian esports is thriving in ways that would not have seemed possible before 2018. The current generation of Indian pro gamers is the first to genuinely make a living from competitive gaming. The scene that Forsaken almost destroyed, quietly, stubbornly, grown into something real. And as for Forsaken himself, his 5-year ban finally expired in 2023. Whether he ever returns to competitive play is unclear under a different name or continues with his current brand. He's largely stayed out of the public eye, but his name and that infamous file, Word.exe, will be talked about as long as CSGO esports exists. This is a story about what happens when ambition outpaces due diligence, when the hunger to expand, to be the biggest, to move into new markets, to grab that next opportunity, means you rush past the warning signs that were right in front of you the entire time. OpTic Gaming built something extraordinary in India. They found genuinely talented players. They invested real money and real effort into a scene that desperately needed it. They had the right idea, but they let one person in who they shouldn't have. Someone with a documented history of misconduct. Someone whose own future teammates had heard he was shady. And that one person, in one tournament, on one afternoon in Shanghai, burned the whole thing to the ground in about 20 minutes. The $150 million empire wobbled. The innocent players lost their shot, the nation felt betrayed, and a cheat file called Word.exe became the most infamous piece of software in Indian esports history. The question that always remains is simple. What if someone had just run a background check? If you made it this far, this channel is for you. Hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. We go into deep dives on esports stories, scandals, and business. Drop a comment below. Do you think OpTic India could have worked if Forsaken had never been on the team? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.